Hello people, Richie here again from Richie Reports UK. Just thought I'd give you a little bit of update on Mark Steyn, who used to be on GB News. He used to have his 8 o'clock weekday show Monday to Thursday on there. And probably as you know, I think it's about a week or 10 days before Christmas, he had 2 heart attacks. And obviously he was not able to do the show anymore. And that was the last we saw him on GB News. He obviously had to go to hospital and that, and he had 1 heart attack here and a minor heart attack, and then a more major one after he'd already gone. I think he'd gone on a trip to France. He was in the French hospital over Christmas, and that was the sort of last we heard of it. But now it turns out that basically he's been betrayed and cancelled by GB News due to his reports on his show. He done reports on vaccine injuries and some of the Rotherham child grooming gangs. He did a lot of reports on that, and it was usual things that were letting the truth out. He's dropping a fair few truth bombs on his show. Basically, as we know, the government don't like that, and it's come out the last couple of days that he was offered a new contract with GB News, but part of the contract was he would, if he came back on air, he would have to pay like a fine from Ofcom. He would be given a fine, or have to pay a fine of £40,000. Obviously, he's refused that, so he's resigned from GB News. And it's recently come out that the backers of GB News, a lot of US and foreign backers of the channel, and including Bill Gates, among many others. And there's a bit on UK Column today. They done a feature on it as well. They ran a feature. So that's what's happened to Mark Steyn. It's a bit of a shame because he's one of the best presenters they had on there, and I think they're probably they're coming for Neil Oliver as well now, because it looks like his show he done on Saturday. It was about, I think he was talking about like juries and things like that, and they were calling him anti-Semitic. So there's some bits coming out about Neil Oliver now, so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes. If he leaves GB News, the channel won't be worth watching anymore. Apparently they were only down, I think 800 viewers they had the other night, and on one of their prime time shows. But so if he goes, it won't be worth watching it. So, but Neil Oliver's got his own YouTube channel, and Mark Steyn's also got his own website, which he's had for quite some time, where he puts up podcasts and video blogs, that sort of thing. Like, he's been doing quite a lot on his own website for quite some time. So I'll show you what he's got on his website. Here's Mark Steyn. He does a kind of like the Mark Steyn cruise. Didn't know about that. He does a sort of like a celebrity sort of cruise thing. But I mean, he's Canadian. He's recently come from Canada. So, but he's got all sorts of things on his website there. You can sign up like for an email, or he's got like the Mark Steyn Club you can join there. But he's got all sorts of stuff there, video blogs and podcasts, bits and pieces like that, news articles. So you want to keep up with Mark Steyn. At least we know, although it's not ideal, at least we know he's well on the mend now, and he's more or less back to normal, doing his own stuff again. Just that he won't be on GB News. After the end of this video, I'll add on a little piece he did on his latest vlog. His latest vlog called Ofcom popped Mark Steyn's balloon, and it's about 3/4 of an hour, but I've just cut out a little 5-minute piece I'll tag on the end of this video that explains basically why he won't be back, and if he did go back to GB News, he'd be issued with a £40,000 fine. So basically that's why he's resigned from the channel. So stay on here and watching. After the end of this video, I'll add on a little 5-minute piece of Mark Steyn's show saying why he's resigned and what happened. So continue watching for that.
Hey, Welcome along. This is the way we used to do things, if you remember, before the COVID clobbered the entire planet. It's a video addendum to our audio Q&A because we had such a bunch of good questions, a lot I didn't get to, and as it had been a while, because of my brace of heart attacks since I had been here in the flesh, or what passes for the flesh, because I'm loaded up with lots of artificial parts these days. I thought we would bring the format back and I'd get to some of your questions on it. But it won't be on GB News. The state of play between me and GB News is that they have sent me a contract. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that Stephen Crowder thing where you read out the terms of your contract, because I don't think that makes for great television. So I'm just going to skim a couple of clauses. These are the ones. People have noticed a change. Now this came up. I was already set to return to GB News, and the habitual liar who runs the joint then decided that we needed a defibrillator in the studio for me to be able to go back. And then a lady who works on the show said, no problem, defibrillators are us, sending one round in 20 minutes. Then he decided something else. So the state of play at the moment is that he's sent me a contract. This is a guy called Angelos Frangopoulos, the CEO of GB News. And the contract's he's chosen to change the terms by which we do the show, which would be stressful, but I've had 2 heart attacks, so I laugh at stress. I scoff at stress. You don't stress me out. You may be a homicidal maniac intent of bringing on a 3rd fatal heart attack, but you'll have to do better than this. But I did think it was interesting in light of what's happened at GB News. There's this new clause, editorial responsibility. For the avoidance of doubt, as the Ofcom license holder, GB News has editorial responsibility for the Mark Steyn Show and all content produced for GB News by the presenter and the US producers. Therefore, the parties agree that GB News's editorial decisions shall prevail, which I wouldn't really mind. But I remember we had a little Ofcom back and forth about 10 minutes before I went on air a couple of months back, and my final words about the so-called compliance officer was that he was, quote, Ofcom's bitch. And at that point I hung up. Well, Ofcom's bitch has managed to have his revenge now. And then it goes on, says, GB News will ensure that the presenter and the US producers attend regular Ofcom training provided by the company's compliance officer. The Mark Steyn Show will ensure that the presenter and US producers adhere to editorial input provided by the company's editorial director or such person designated. But what it is, and this is the final point I'll make on this, and that to the extent that the presenter and or the US producers do not incorporate Ofcom regulatory input into an edition of the program, this shall be considered a material breach of this agreement, and the Mark Steyn Company shall indemnify GB News for any and all direct loss liability costs, including reasonable legal costs, damages or expenses that it suffers as a result of any regulatory breach. So the whole thing is, I'm on the hook therefore for Ofcom fines, but, and this is the important point, I don't have any say in our defense against an Ofcom complaint. That's all done by GB News. So the Ofcom's bitch, as I call the compliance officer, will be making the weedy, wimpy defense to Ofcom, and then I'm the one who has to pay the £40,000 fine or whatever it is.